speaking of speaking of things that are lackluster and just all around.
God.
We are going to move into our little final segment here with Moon Knight episode 1 recap reactions. I'm not going to start. I want Zombie to start with his thoughts on the show.
It was fantastic. No, it was.
If you thought it was fantastic, that's fine. That's fine. You're wrong, but it's fine.
So, here's the condensation. I've been a Moon Knight fan for easily 20 years. I've been reading this series since the Mark Spector Moon Knight books, with 2 notable volume exceptions: the Max Bemis run from 2018 to 2019, and the Bendis run. I've got just about every issue, and I love this character. It's just so much fun. Multiple writers have added to it and added the lore, and he's become an even better character than what he used to be. And it's multifaceted. It's just really cool. I haven't read any of the new series yet, but I'm hoping it's good. But in 1972, Francis Ford Coppola made a movie, and there's one scene in The Godfather that sums up my entire impression of this first episode, and that's after Sonny gets machine gunned down at the toll booth.
Look how they must be my boy.
Yeah, the Godfather takes his son to the funeral director, the mortician, that he owes a favor to from the wedding, and says, "Look at what they did to my boy." And that's all I was thinking through this, because they turned the Stephen Grant persona, and Moon Knight Mark Spector is a broken man. He's mentally ill. He has multiple personalities. He's got Jake Lockley, Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Mr. Knight, and then Moon Knight, and he is the avatar of Khonshu, but you're never sure if he's really the avatar of Khonshu, or if Khonshu is just another aspect of the multiple personalities, and he dresses up in a costume and thinks he's the avatar. So you've got this really messed up thing going on, and in this, they just totally linearized that. They made it so that he just jumps from one personality to the other, and he doesn't know what's going on. It was real fractured. They tried to add horror elements in that didn't work. They tried to add broken time elements in that didn't work. Everybody's going to talk about the terrible accent. But that wasn't even, I have like 30 other problems with it before I even get to the accent. And look, man, I'm not a big Oscar Isaacs fan, but he's a decent actor, and I don't know what the hell he's doing for his paycheck in this, but it certainly is an act. The special effects, the special effects felt really weak. This is a Disney movie. Where's the money? Where's all the money? They supposedly put a ton of money into this. Where is it?
I'm pretty sure most of it went to marketing and then the director's pocket.
Well, that's the other thing, man. And this turned me off right away, too, when the director's, shooting his mouth off that, if you're going to do something, and if you're going to film's going to be set in Egypt, you got to film in Egypt. From the look of this, I don't think they filmed in half the locations they filmed in. It looked like a lot of blue screen work. So I don't get it, man. This is such a disappointment, because this really could have been something that was good, that was really different than everything else they had to offer. And coming from look at where Marvel started off with TV shows, right? We're not going to talk about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. disaster. We're talking about Daredevil. Daredevil was good. The first season of Jessica Jones was good. We're not going to talk about Luke Cage. Second season of Daredevil, excellent. Defenders, and we're not going to talk about whatever the hell that Iron Fist thing that they said it was Iron Fist. It wasn't Iron Fist. And then they did Punisher, and Punisher was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. Bernthal kind of was hitting some notes.
I enjoyed the first season of Punisher. Punisher 2 got too wokey.
Yeah, but I just don't get how you go from those and then you get to this. And Moon Knight is a character he's more gritty and more brutal than Punisher.
Right.
And there's nothing. I mean, there was one sequence, and it's like 3 seconds long, where they're in the bathroom after they finally turn in the episode, and he's Moon Knight. And the rest of the time, you don't see anything. And it's like,
right.
That's what you want. I mean, I want that Houston and Finch, and that's like maximum carnage.
Yeah, that was no say.
But at least
Disney, bro.
But at least give me something. And there was just nothing here. It's an empty. You know what it is? This is the biggest disappointment of my life.
Well, that's the problem. That's a big problem I have, is like they have all these great stories to tell, and especially with Moon Knight, like going, when we talked about it originally, there's so much good you can do with this character, and like every good thing that they could do, they just were like, nah, I'm gonna flush that down the toilet, and we're just gonna do our own thing. That old, like, you hear it all the time. I'm gonna tell my story, my version. It's like, no,
yeah, no,
your
that's not why you're
sucks.
hired.
We don't tell your story. The reason these stories are good is because you didn't put your grimy little grubby fingers all over them. People who are good at their job did, and that's it. Like, we don't want to hear your story. Exactly, like from the jump with this show, I just felt like betrayed. Even though I haven't like celebrated Moon Knight the way you have, like I've been reading it, and this did not make me feel like they had any understanding of who these characters are. And Stephen Grant was the biggest wuss in the, like, and he's not even like, it just had nothing to do with anything that I've read as far as Moon Knight goes. And I was trying to figure out, okay, when are we actually going to talk about it? Like Mark Spector was just this like apparition. Like he wasn't even the main focus. And,
well, the way they presented it was Mark Spector's Moon Knight.
Right.
Which Mark Spector is Moon Knight, but and it's layered and it's different. But at the end of the day, the way they presented it was until the Mark Spector persona took over, he couldn't be Moon Knight. And that's Mark Spector is separate from Moon Knight. Moon Knight's different than Mark Spector, is just like Mark Spector is different than Jake Lockley,
right.
And Jake Lockley is different than Stephen Grant, and they're all different than Mr. Knight. And from all the presentations that they're showing you, Mr. Knight's going to show up, and I can't wait to see how they mess this up. Well, but I can't wait. I mean, I'm done, man. I don't think I'm going to watch another episode of this. Like, it's just, this one really burned me bad.
The only thing I can think of all this is that, so with all these like lost passages of time, like obviously what's going on. Mark Spector's taking over and he's doing it, and then it goes back to Stephen Grant. But like the only way I think they can justify what they've done so far is that there's going to be flashbacks of understanding where this person came from, because you don't even see the character of Moon Knight until the final second, and then it cuts to black, right? And then another like the end credits were more interesting than the rest of the show. There are like more production value in the end credits than there was in the show. Like it's everything is so sterile compared to like the comics, right? This is a very, very sterile version of Moon Knight. There's no blood. I mean, there is, but it's like, it's not as brutal as it could be. There's a couple moments where you're like, ooh, okay. But not anywhere near like ripping someone's face off,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm putting hope in quotes here, and I use it very liberally. The only hope that I see is that we are going to get a fair amount of story about where everything, because they don't even say, I don't even think they say the name Khonshu. You see it in the subtitles, but like you don't even hear about the other voice that he's hearing.
There's one moment, and that's he's talking about the banners from the museum, and they only have the 7 gods on, and he references the 8th, and before he can say Khonshu, the inventory lady Karen interrupts him and puts him in his patriarchal place that he has to finish doing inventory.
Yeah, and how about that for a first interaction? Not only is Stephen Grant the biggest beta ever written, but his first real interaction with anybody is a woman belittling him, like, and just basically calling him an asshole. And it'll never amount to anything, and he'll never be a tour guide, even though he has quite a bit of information on these Egyptian gods. Well, like, and for what purpose? Like, I'm watching this, like, how does this move the story forward at all, other than, okay, there's this dainty beta who's going to, I guess, eventually become a very violent anti-hero.
Well, and how many times do we have to establish in a, 30-40 minute show? How many times do we have to establish that he is weak in beta?
Right.
Because they do it repeatedly.
At least 10 times. That's quota.
Right. Like, if I could get bruised by a TV show, I would have been in the hospital. Like I got
black
hit so
and
hard.
blue.
Yeah. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Space Zombie. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. So like, yeah, like all this is the like major fan of like Moon Knight. You're kind of a moderate fan. I don't think I've read any actual like main Moon Knight comics. I probably read like a comic where he was a side character for like 3 panels, and that was it. and like I've played him in a few of the Marvel games that come out on mobile when I'm bored. Like I'll get him randomly, like, oh cool, this dude looks nice.
Mhm.
And I read a little bit into his backstory, so I don't know a whole lot about Moon Knight. So, but even then, watching the show, I did not like Stephen Grant the entire time. It's like he is in this show too much already, and it's only the first episode.
There's
the
no
first
reason to like him.
episode, yeah, the first episode is supposed to grab you. It's supposed to like want you to come back for more. I'm not motivated to come back, but like I was saying, like it's a fine episode. Like it's fine for what Marvel's been becoming lately. You know, kind of schlocky, same old shit.
Right.
But like you're saying with like the blood, like it was like very tame bloodshed. Like you don't get to see him shooting these people, beating the crap out of them, getting his jaw dislodged.
Well,
You don't
here's
see
the
that.
at the end of the day,
Wakes
here's the
up with
thing:
it.
is what audience are you going for?
Right.
Because like my wife and I sat down and we watched WandaVision, and we both liked it for what it was for the first few episodes because it was kind of kitschy in how they were handling it.
Yeah.
And for somebody that was a normie, my wife was like, "Oh, this is interesting," and how they're handling it. And then it lost her at the end. And at the end is when I kind of keyed in, like, "Oh, I see you're trying to bring in these comic tones, but you're doing it all wrong." And so they lost me. So what do you try? Who are you trying to keep? Because okay, you can draw somebody in, but then you're not keeping them. Well, with this, like, who are you going for with this? Because that whole sequence, number one, Stephen Grant is the Bruce Wayne persona. He is the Spectre made a ton of money, and his fractured personalities when he jumped over into the Stephen Grant, he invested it all and he became a multimillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how justifiably in the comic you always go like, how does Moon Knight have the wealth to do all this stuff? Well, because he's got Stephen Grant. And when he's Stephen Grant, he's got millions of dollars and he's high society, but he is super polished. Like Stephen Grant he's the slickest salesman, he's the slickest businessman. He's that upper crust, just he knows everybody can wax the wheels, get the deal done. That's wow. Like, how do you 180 that?
Right.
Like only in 2020 Disney do you 180 that into this.
Well, not only
and
that,
then who is
right?
that supposed to appeal to?
Yeah, and not only did they give him this like, so he's got this like beta personality, very unlike any like multimillionaire would be. They don't even make him a multimillionaire. He's like calling his parents and saying "lay a gay is" and fucking whatever the fuck that was. And he, what was the other thing? I was just gonna say that he's a fucking vegan, dude, and he's sitting there crying into his plate because he missed a date.
Some chick he didn't remember the name of.
Right, like, and they never even do they even tell you who that like the girl's name is? Like,
no, well, it was very evident
there.
based off of how they presented it that she wasn't interested in Stephen Grant. She was interested in at some point Mark Spector had been in and asked her out.
Right.
Then but it's lost. Oh, we lost time. Oh shit. Oh, later, Gators. Like it's just what the hell?
Chip,
well,
what the hell? It just
I was gonna say, here's a question. Like, so, and this is why I think there's going to be a lot more explanation in the coming episodes. Because why is someone like Stephen Grant, like, why is that character? As we see the character of Stephen Grant, the very last thing you see, or one of the very last things you see, at one point is he is going to bed, and it's assumed that it's Stephen Grant at this point. He's putting the dirt around his bed. He's locking himself in. He's strapping himself on a thing, and then he's doing some things to, like, I guess, keep him awake. Like, none of that is really explained. Why is Stephen Grant conscious of this, first of all? And why does he seem confused when he wakes up and he's touching the tape? Like, or are we meant to believe at that point, through very vague details, that he becomes Spectre sometimes, and that's how he puts himself to sleep? Like Spectre knows that he is trying to, like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I was trying to like put these details together. Like, what does this even mean? When are they going to answer this question? It's really, really annoying.
I kind of got like some Doctor Sleep vibes, where like he's having like the nightmare stuff going on, like the dreams are scary. Yeah.
Shining. Yeah.
It's like, I feel like if you were watching that movie and then you watch this show, you could be like, oh, maybe that's what's going on. But it's like, not everyone's going to watch that movie and then come to this or whatever. Like, it's a very loose connection that I could see happening. And I think he does say like he has like sleepwalking episodes or something, like at the very beginning, and then they never bring it up again.
I can really deep lore down into Moon Knight too, because like you were saying, Snick, I think mentioned in the chat, like, you know, that he has parents. Like, oh man, that's a mess, because there's a whole situation with who his dad was originally in the comics versus who they retconned him to be, and it gets ugly. But at the end of the day, no, I mean, everything that they presented in this is just, it's wrong for the character. What did they get right? The scenes where like he's Mark and he's Stephen Grant and he's fumbling, and then like there seems to be like a fade to black, and then he comes back and people are on the ground bleeding. That's accurate, because that's Moon Knight.
Right.
Moon Knight would just kick the shit out of everybody. Like he's brutal. He doesn't hold anything back. He's Batman without the cuffs about worrying about killing people, is what he is. And it's brutality to the ends justify the means squared. He will do anything he can, including using a piece of glass to rip off somebody's face, or just rip their face off, or gouge their eyes out, or throw somebody off a building because they won't tell him what he wants to hear, because there's two other people that he can grab. It's just, he's got no care in the world. And it's like, I understand they can't do all that for a Disney movie.
Right.
But man, they did some pretty brutal stuff in some of the other Disney series. And so you can kind of push that limit. So it's just, it's such a miss. And
and that's the thing. They don't have to rip someone's face off to show someone's brutality. Like, just break someone's elbow or crush their whatever. There's so many different things that these superheroes or whatever can do to illustrate their brutal nature. And for whatever reason, Disney decided that they were going to throw that all in the garbage. Again, we're one episode in, but what happened here was not like Space Zombie said it. In a premiere, you want to grab people's attention. It's okay to ask questions and present more questions, but all they did was present questions to us and confuse us as to what was even happening. So and I think I tweeted this out. They wrote this character as if everyone had read Moon Knight and understood who they were, but gave you no details. So
you would be hard pressed to find a Marvel character that is more underread than Moon Knight. Like, this is just a weird one to pick. Especially if you're gonna, no, Morbius actually has a following though, because Morbius was a side character in Spider-Man, which is a really good selling book.
True.
And was also part of the Midnight Suns, which sold really well in the early 90s. Moon Knight, I mean, this book, other than, I mean, he had volume 1, which I think only lasted like 3.5, maybe 3 years. The Mark Spector Moon Knight, which was the second volume, that lasted the longest, and that only lasted until the early 90s. And then they rebooted it yet again, and then they rebooted it yet again. Like, this is a book that just, it can't get past issue like 80. It's just not one of those books that has any kind of legs. And you really have to be a fan to kind of dig the weird way the character is structured to get along. It's not something where, when I'm looking at the Marvel bullpen and I go like, hey, what can we do a series on? This is not on my top 5 list. Yeah. So if you're going to pick this character out, if you're going to pick something this weird, like, man, there's got to be a reason for it. And you have to have a good spin. But to come out with this means you had no spin and you didn't understand the character. So why bother? Because there's like 17 other characters that are this tier in the Marvel canon that you could have done this with. Yeah. And it wouldn't have mattered. Nobody would have batted an eye. But you picked Moon Knight, who actually has a like small hardcore fan following. So it makes less sense than anything else.
Honestly, like the way they portray this character probably would have fit like in a more Ghost Rider kind of story. I could see it working with Ghost Rider, like he's freaking out about having these nightmares of being a flaming skeleton.
No, and it's funny you mentioned that, because that's kind of what I was thinking in my head is like, man, you could kind of do something cool. Now it's not canon, but you could kind of do something cool with where he turns into Ghost Rider. He just forgets everything that happened, and then he wakes up somewhere and he doesn't remember it. That would have been neat, and that kind of fits more into the style.
That'd be a cool way of portraying Ghost Rider, honestly. I would have liked to see that.
That would have been, I think that would have been a better way. I think you could have done it with a couple of. You could have done it with a kind of a Deathlock type run, where it's a flash.
It's so cool.
Well, it's where it's a flashback back and forth, where he's on a mission and he's killing somebody, and then when he comes back and he gets plugged in, it's like he's back in his Al Simmons mindset.
Yeah,
and it's he's living his life before he was hurt, and then he goes to bed and wakes up and he's killing somebody. You could have done a lot of neat stuff. There's so many options.
I don't know. I just think it just kind of goes back to people being creatively bankrupt. They're not getting the right people to write these scripts, and it's unfortunate because there are a lot of great stories. There's a lot of different angles they could take, and if they only took the time to flush them out, but pardon me, at this point they're seeing the dollar signs. They know that people are going to go see it, but I think eventually it's going to hit a critical mass. Like, people are just they're just going to stop going. The real comic book fans, the people that they're hoping to put in the seats, they're just gonna be like, no, because you ruined my previous favorite character, and now you're going to do it again. Like, there's no indication that they actually care about the stories that I've told. The reason that we love characters, they don't care about those. They don't care about what made us give a crap about their story.
Well, because we're on the end. We're on the end of this run, and when I say we're on the end of this run, I want to remind everybody, Iron Man came out in 2008. Like, we've been on this superhero run for quite a while, so it's already hit its zenith. We're on the wayside. We're falling down, and what you're seeing is the detritus of just, we think this works, and they're throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks so that they can make some money until the next thing comes along. And whatever the next thing is, then they'll gravitate over to that. But as far as this IP goes, as far as Disney mining the Marvel universe, it's over. And the reason it's over is because they're throwing stuff out like this.
They're hitting bedrock at this point.
They're grabbing characters that have a little bit of a hardcore following. And the reason it has a hardcore following is they keep on rebooting the book. So they're rebooting the book, and you get initial good sales numbers, and then the writing sucks. So they just trail off, they cancel it. And then they go, well, but we got good numbers. And so they reboot it, and the same thing repeats. The problem is each time it's like a drop, right?
Yeah.
So you go from 30,000 to 20,000 to 10,000 to 5,000, and you go, well, this issue never sold. So why are we doing this? Well, come on, man. It's because you figure out the problem. Because back when it was Mark Spector and you had, Mike Barron on it and Chuck Dixon, it was selling. But, we can't put good writers on anything because we can't afford them anymore. So
this is it's like the fourth turning for comic book movies at this point. They've just, at one point it was difficult. There were hard times, and it created these really strong characters. And now we're in the point where it's like, well, now it's easy times, and we're developing characters. And that's what it feels like. It feels sort of like a mirror of our actual culture at this point.
I remember back on the first episode I was in the chat, I was saying Netflix would have done a way better job with Moon Knight, 100%. Like I was saying, with like the grittiness of the other characters. They may not have been like a perfect job, but it would have been a lot better than this first episode.
Well, it's too bright. Like, I think we talked about it in the trailer. It's too bright.
Yeah.
It's too much. The colors are too saturated in this. It doesn't feel like it's like if it looked more like Northman, like if the colors had been like more desaturated and like, things were dirtier. Like,
well, my corollary to that is there was a great little meme that was going out when the Batman dropped, and it was every Batman movie since 1989. And you see Michael Keaton, and he's backlit, and he's got actual glare off his suit, and you can see him.
Yep.
And then, each one gets progressively darker until they had like the Batman, which is the modern one. And then it was like 2025 Batman, and it was just a black panel. So, it gets a little ridiculous too, because like I had this problem with Tenet. Like there were some scenes in Christopher Nolan's Tenet where it was the blacks were so heavy, I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, okay, I get it. In a theater where it's pitch black, it looks amazing. But on my TV, and I mean, I've got a really nice plasma that has great blacks, but my God, man, like if there's any ambient light, like I can't see a picture. Come on. Yeah. Like give me something that I can watch outside of a perfect theatrical environment. Lighten some stuff up. Give me a little bit of, ambience. Give me some color. And that seems to be totally forgotten. And this wasn't done in Moon Knight, fortunately. But one of the general trends, too, in a lot of these is like there's an overabundance use of filters. And whether it's the two main color of filters that you seem to use now are blue and yellow.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of seeing it. Like, at least throw a gray in, man. Like, do something. Mix it up. Put a red tint on something. It's just not done anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only reason I want to continue watching this series is because we're doing this podcast talking about it. Like,
Right.
that's the only reason I want to come back to that show.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's definitely a big stinker for me.
Another thing that I just remembered was back in the first episode again, Aldous was asking you, like, when is enough for you? Like, how much can Disney trample on you before you give up? I think this show is kind of my end point. It's like, this is just more shit sandwich. Kind of tired of shit sandwich.